Part 1. The silent arrival, the rain had already begun when the plane touched down, coating the runway in a thin silver shimmer. Aria sat motionless in her seat, staring through the fogged window as if the world outside were nothing, more than a distant memory she wasn't ready to reclaim. The other passengers unbuckled their belts quickly, eager to go home, eager to return to lives untouched by the things she had seen. But Aria remained still, letting them pass her one by one. She felt the weight of her duffel bag before she even lifted it. It wasn't the bag's contents that made it heavy. It was the ghosts she carried inside it. The voices, the memories, the silence. When she finally stepped into the terminal, a cold draft swept across her face, making her shiver. It wasn't from the temperature. It was from the realization that she no longer knew who she was outside of uniform, outside of war. She was returning to a world she had left behind, a world that had kept moving without her. Her mother was waiting at the exit, fingers twisted together in anxious knots. When Aria approached, her mother's eyes widened, not with joy alone, but with uncertainty. Aria had changed. It was impossible not to see it. The one sprite expression she carried was now replaced by something quieter, dimmer, as though someone had blown out a candle inside her. "Aria," her mother whispered. Aria nodded slightly. "Mom." The hug that followed was fragile, an embrace between two people learning each other all over again. Her mother clung to her, as if afraid Aria might vanish if she let go. And maybe she would. Aria didn't trust herself not to dissolve into the air. The drive home was filled with soft attempts at conversation, none of which took root. Aria watched the passing trees, the familiar houses, the quiet streets she used to know. They felt foreign now, too peaceful, too silent. It unnerved her. When they arrived, Aria paused at the doorway to her childhood home. The walls, the furniture, the pictures on the shelves, all exactly as she remembered, yet they felt like relics of another lifetime. A life that belonged to someone else. She walked through the hallway slowly, fingers grazing the walls. Her room was untouched, as though frozen in time. The posters on the wall, the books on the shelf, the old sweater hanging on the chair, everything waited for the version of her who had left years ago. But that Aria was gone. That night, sleep did not come. Every time she closed her eyes, the past returned in fragments, explosions in the distance, Mason shouting her name, the heat of the desert sun on her skin, the smell of gunpowder, the ringing in her ears after every blast. She woke up gasping, gripping the sheets as if they could save her from drowning in memories. She rose from her bed and opened the drawer of her nightstand. Inside was a folded envelope she had carried home but never opened. Mason's handwriting decorated the front in bold strokes. She traced the letters with her thumb, feeling the ache rise in her chest. Not yet, she thought. Not tonight. The next morning, her brother Daniel arrived. He stood in the doorway of her room, staring at her as if he didn't recognize the sister he once idolized. His hesitation stung more than she expected. "You look different," he muttered. Aria forced a smile. "So do you." Their conversation was polite, distant, and painfully forced. Daniel avoided asking about the war, avoided looking at the scars on her arms, avoided the truth sitting heavily between them. Later that day, Aria walked alone to the Veterans Center. She needed air. She needed room to breathe. The building was small but warm, filled with soft light that felt strangely comforting. Laura, the counselor, met her with a knowing smile. "First visit?" Laura asked gently. Aria nodded. They sat together, or rather, Laura sat while Aria remained standing, arms folded tightly across her chest. Laura didn't push. She simply waited, allowing Aria the space she needed. "You don't have to talk," Laura eventually said. "Just breathe." Those simple words almost broke Aria. By the time she returned home that evening, exhaustion settled deep into her bones. The hallway felt too narrow, too confining. She collapsed against the wall, sliding down until she sat curled on the floor. Tears she didn't know she was holding back streamed silently down her face. Her mother approached slowly. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" Aria covered her face with her hands. "Everything." But even then, she couldn't explain the storms inside her. That night, unable to sleep again, Aria set up her camera. It was old, dusty, untouched for years. She sat before it, breathing deeply before pressing record. "I don't know why I'm doing this," she began, voice trembling. "Maybe because I feel like I'm disappearing." She spoke for several minutes, struggling to find words that captured the heaviness inside her. Not once did. She mentioned Mason by name, but she felt him in every sentence. When she ended the recording, she hesitated before uploading it. But she did. The next morning, her phone buzzed relentlessly. Comments, messages, people sharing their own stories, their own pain, their own fears. But one message caught her breath. "I served with Mason. There's something you need to know." Everything inside her froze. The storm had only just begun. Part 2. Shadows in the hallway. The message replayed in Aria's mind like an echo she couldn't silence. "I served with Mason. There's something you need to know." Those words followed her through the house, into her dreams, and into the quiet spaces she tried to hide in. Shadows stretched long across the hallway as she paced, unable to sit, unable to rest. Her mother watched her with worry. But Aria couldn't bring herself to explain. How could she? How do you tell someone that a ghost from your past has resurfaced with a truth you may not survive hearing? Her phone buzzed again. Cole, if you're willing, I'd like to meet. I think you deserve to know everything. Aria's fingers hovered over the screen. She wasn't ready, and yet the idea of not knowing was worse than the pain she feared. She typed back, tomorrow, 3 p.m. The old cafe near the river. The rest of the day moved like wet cement. Heavy, slow, suffocating. That night, Aria tried to sleep, but her thoughts kept pulling her into memories she had avoided for years. Mason's laugh, Mason's voice, the way he stood beside her during the toughest moments of deployment, the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. In the dark, her mind drifted back to the last morning she saw him alive. They were preparing for rotation. The sky barely touched with dawn. Mason had looked exhausted, shadows under his eyes, but he still smiled when he saw her. Couldn't sleep again? Aria had asked. Not really, he replied. Too much on my mind. She remembered wanting to press him, wanting to ask what was bothering him. But missions didn't allow room for personal conversations, not when survival depended on staying focused. Now she wished she had asked. She wished she had paid more attention. She wished 1,000 things she could never change. By morning, Aria looked as though she hadn't slept at all. She stared at her reflection, the dark circles under her eyes, the tremor in her hands, the exhaustion weighing down her shoulders. She didn't feel like someone preparing for answers. She felt like someone walking into a storm. At precisely 3 p.m., she arrived at the cafe. The smell of roasted coffee beans filled the air as she stepped inside. Cole was already there, sitting in the corner, his hands folded tightly in front of him. His eyes softened when he saw her. Aria, he said gently, standing. She nodded and sat across from him, her pulse quickening. He reached into his jacket and placed a worn envelope on the table. This is for you, he said. But before you read it, you need to understand something. Mason didn't want to leave things unfinished. He carried a lot more weight than any of us realized. Aria swallowed hard. What do you mean? Cole looked away briefly, as though gathering strength. The day he died, he wasn't just fighting. He was protecting something. Someone. Her breath hitched. Who? Cole met her eyes. You. The world fell silent. Aria forced herself to breathe, but her chest tightened painfully. Mason cared about you more than anything, Cole continued. We all knew it. He tried to hide it, but out there, nothing stays hidden for long. Aria felt tears burning behind her eyes. Why didn't he say anything? She whispered. He was going to, Cole said softly. He told me the night before. He said he finally had the courage to tell you everything. Aria looked down at the envelope. Mason's handwriting stared back at her, heavy with meaning. Cole placed a steady hand on the table. Aria, whenever you're ready, you should read it. But Aria wasn't ready. Not yet. She stood abruptly, clutching the envelope to her chest, shaking her head. I can't, I'm sorry, she whispered, and rushed out of the cafe. The cold wind outside hit her like a wall. Her breath came in short bursts, her vision blurred. The panic she had been holding inside finally broke free. She stumbled against the railing by the river, gripping it tightly as her body trembled. She wasn't ready for the truth, but the truth was coming anyway. Part 3. The unopened door. Aria didn't remember walking home. Her mind had gone numb, her feet moving on instinct, her heart beating with a rhythm that didn't feel like her own. The envelope in her hand felt heavier with each step, heavy with truth, heavy with memories, heavy with everything she wasn't ready to face. When she finally reached her house, she closed the door quietly behind her. The hallway was dim, lit only by the faint light from the kitchen. She leaned her back against the door and slid down to the floor, clutching the envelope to her chest. She stayed like that for a long time, minutes, maybe hours. Eventually, her mother appeared at the end of the hallway. Aria, honey, are you all right? Aria didn't look up. I'm fine, she whispered, though her voice trembled. Her mother hesitated, then slowly walked toward her. You can talk to me, she said gently. Aria shook her head. I can't, not yet. Her mother placed a hand on her shoulder, then quietly left her alone. That night, Aria sat on her bed, staring at the unopened letter. Her fingers traced the edges again and again, but she couldn't bring herself to tear it open. She remembered the last letter Mason had written before deployment, short, simple, hopeful. He had always spoken with confidence, even when things were uncertain. She remembered the way he used to smile, the way his eyes softened when he looked at her. She remembered the warmth of his presence beside her when the world around them was falling apart. But this letter was different. This letter was the end of something she had never allowed herself to begin. Her hand hovered over the seal. Not yet. She stood abruptly, needing air, needing space. She left the house. The streets were quiet. A cool wind rushed past her, carrying the scent of rain and distant chimneys. The town felt small, too small to contain the weight she carried. She walked aimlessly until she found herself standing in front of Mason's old house. She froze. The porch light was on. A soft glow spilled across the yard, illuminating the wind chimes that still hung beside the door. Mason had hung those chimes himself. He said they made him feel at peace. Aria had never told him, but she loved the sound too. She stepped closer, her heart tightening in her chest. The house looked exactly as she remembered, ordinary, calm, safe. It hurt. The sound of the wind chimes struck her deepest memories. She remembered nights when she and Mason sat outside the barracks, listening to the wind, listening to each other breathe, waiting for dawn. She remembered how he used to talk about home, about coming back, about wanting something more than the war. She remembered the way he'd gone silent whenever emotions grew too close. She remembered wanting to reach out, wanting to tell him she felt the same, but the timing was never right. The timing was never right. Tears blurred her vision as she turned away from the house. When she finally walked back home, the darkness inside felt heavier than the night outside. She went to her room, pulled out the old wooden box she kept hidden beneath her bed, and opened it. Inside were small memories, photos, letters, a dog tag, a bracelet Mason had given her during training. She held the bracelet tightly in her hand. "You were supposed to come back," she whispered. Her voice cracked. "You promised." The next morning, Aria sat at her desk, the envelope in front of her again. Sunlight leaked through the curtains, illuminating the letter like it was something sacred. She took a deep breath. Her heart pounded, her fingers trembled. She pulled the flap and stopped. Her door creaked open. Daniel stood there. "Aria, can we talk?" She looked up, startled. He hesitated before stepping inside. "I know I've been distant," he said quietly. "I didn't know how to talk to you. I didn't want to say the wrong thing." Aria stared at him, surprised. Daniel swallowed hard. "But I'm here, okay? Whatever you're going through, you don't have to go through it alone." Something inside her cracked at those words. She lowered the envelope. For the first time since she returned, she let herself cry in front of him, and he didn't look away. That night, Aria sat on her bed again, the letter still unopened. But now, it felt a little less heavy. She wasn't ready yet, but for the first time, she felt like maybe she would be. Part 4. What the night revealed. Aria didn't sleep. She lay awake long after the house fell silent, watching shadows move across her ceiling like silent whispers from the past. The unopened letter rested on her nightstand, glowing faintly under the moonlight, like a living thing, like a heartbeat she wasn't ready to touch. Every time she reached for it, her hand froze. What if the truth inside that letter broke her? What if it healed her? Which one was worse? The questions twisted inside her chest until the air felt thin. By morning, sunlight spilled across her room in pale gold sheets. Aria pushed herself out of bed, moving slowly, as if any sudden motion might shatter the delicate balance she had maintained through the night. Downstairs, She heard quiet voices, her mother and Daniel, speaking softly. When she entered the kitchen, both turned abruptly. Daniel's eyes softened. Her mother smiled gently. "Good morning," they said almost in unison. Aria nodded, gripping the edge of the table before sitting down. Her mother poured her tea, and Daniel pushed a plate of toast toward her without saying a word. It was small. It was ordinary. It almost felt like home. Almost. Later that afternoon, the sound of rain tapping against her window made the world feel softer, quieter. Aria sat on her bed, staring at the letter again. She picked it up, turned it over, felt the weight of words she hadn't yet seen. Her fingers trembled. Not yet. She placed it back down and stood quickly, needing air, needing motion. The rain had eased to a soft drizzle when Aria stepped outside. She walked aimlessly again, letting her feet decide for her. The familiar streets blurred into a haze of soft grays and blues as she drifted through the town. Her steps eventually brought her to the river, the same river she had run to after leaving the cafe. The water flowed steadily, reflecting the muted sky. Aria leaned against the railing, gripping it as though steadying herself against memories that threatened to drag her under. She closed her eyes, and then she heard it, a voice she thought she would never hear again. Aria, her breath hitched. She spun around. The riverbank was empty, but the voice lingered, not in the air, but deep inside her memories, so vivid, so real that her knees almost buckled beneath her. Mason's voice. She closed her eyes, letting the memory surface. The desert, nightfall. The two of them sitting on overturned crates, staring at a sky littered with stars. Mason had been quiet that night, unusually so. Aria remembered nudging him gently. "You okay?" she had asked. Mason glanced at her, his eyes reflecting moonlight. "Yeah," he said softly, "just thinking." "About what?" He hesitated. "Home." Aria had smiled faintly. "What about it?" Mason leaned back, exhaling slowly. "I don't know. Sometimes I feel like if I ever make it back, I won't know how to live there anymore. Like war will follow me everywhere." Aria had looked at him, really looked at him. "Mason," she whispered, "you'll find your way." He met her gaze then fully, deeply, and she remembered something shifting inside her, something she pretended not to notice. "Maybe," he said, "if someone shows me how." Her heart had stumbled when he said that, but she didn't respond. Neither of them did. A missed moment, a missed lifetime. Aria snapped her eyes open, gripping the railing harder. "He wanted to come home," she whispered. "He wanted a life." A droplet of rain rolled down her cheek. Or maybe it was a tear, she couldn't tell. That evening, Laura called. "I've been thinking about you," Laura said softly. "How are you holding up?" Aria hesitated, then sank onto her bed. I'm overwhelmed, she admitted. That's okay, Laura said. Overwhelm means something inside you is ready to be acknowledged. Aria glanced at the letter on her nightstand. I'm scared, she whispered, of what he wrote, of what it will make me feel. Laura was silent for a moment. Aria, she said finally, sometimes the truth hurts because it was meant to heal. Aria felt her chest tighten. And sometimes, Laura continued, the truth is what sets the memories free. Free. The word lingered in the air like a soft exhale. That night, Aria stood in front of the mirror. She looked at her reflection, the dark circles, the worry lines, the haunted eyes, and wondered when she had become someone afraid of paper and ink. She opened the window, letting the cool night air wash over her. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled. She turned back to the nightstand, to the letter. This time she walked toward it. She picked it up, held it, closed her eyes, breathed. Her fingers found the seal. She pulled. A soft knock at the door stopped her. Aria froze. Aria. Daniel's voice came from the hallway. Can we talk? The letter remained closed, for now, but she was close, closer than she had ever been. And the night, heavy with rain and memory, waited with her. Part 5. Echoes of the Past. The morning light seeped gently into Aria's room, brushing across her face in soft golden strokes. But even warmth could not soften the weight inside her chest. The letter Mason's letter lay on her nightstand like a silent promise, like a door waiting to be opened. And yet, she couldn't force herself to step through it. Not yet. Downstairs, the smell of coffee drifted through the air. Daniel and her mother were talking quietly, their voices low and cautious, as if afraid to disturb the fragile calm of the house. Aria joined them, though she felt like a visitor in her own home. Daniel glanced up, offering her a small, tentative smile. Morning, he said gently. She nodded. Her mother placed a mug in front of her. Did you sleep? Aria didn't answer. The silence was answer enough. Later that day, Aria found herself wandering again. Her feet took her down familiar streets, past places she had once known like the back of her hand. But everything looked different now. Smaller, quieter, as if the world had shrunk while she was gone. She eventually stopped at the small park she used to visit as a teenager. Children were playing near the swings, their laughter echoing through the air. A sound she once found comforting now felt distant, as if she were separated from it by an invisible wall. She sat on a bench beneath an old oak tree. The breeze rustled the leaves, creating a soft, whispering sound that reminded her of distant nights on deployment. The wind brushing over tents, the soft murmur of soldiers trying to sleep, the way Mason used to hum to himself when he thought no one was listening. A memory surfaced, vivid and sudden. They were huddled near a fire, trying to stay warm in the desert night. Mason was tending to a small flame, his hands steady even though the wind tried to smother it. "Cold?" he asked without looking up. "A little," Aria had replied, rubbing her hands together. Mason reached into his pack and tossed her a blanket. "Here," she smiled. "Thanks." He hesitated, then said, "I know this sounds stupid, but when we get back home, I want to do something normal, something simple." "Like what?" she asked, amused. "I don't know," he said with a shrug. "Go to a park, sit under a tree, watch kids play. Just something that reminds me the world isn't all fire and fear." Aria had laughed softly. "You're more sentimental than you pretend to be." Mason smirked. "Don't tell anyone." Asterisk sitting under the oak tree now, Aria felt tears sting her eyes. "You wanted this," she whispered. "A quiet place, a normal moment." Her throat tightened. "I wish you were here." On her way home, Aria stopped at the veteran memorial near the town hall. Names were engraved in cold stone, the metal plaque catching the sunlight. Her eyes scanned the list until they landed on his. Mason Hale. Her breath caught. She reached out, fingertips brushing the engraved letters. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have told you. I should have said something. Anything." A light gust of wind swept past her, swirling fallen leaves into the air. For a heartbeat, it felt like a response, a whisper from the past, carried on the breeze. When she arrived home, Daniel was sitting on the porch steps. He stood as she approached. "Aria, can we talk?" She hesitated, then nodded. He took a breath. "I know things haven't been easy between us. I know I haven't been the brother you needed, but I'm trying." His voice cracked slightly. "I'm really trying." Aria looked at him, really looked at him. The guilt, the concern, the love buried beneath awkward hesitation, it was all there. "You don't have to try so hard," she said gently. "Just be here." Daniel nodded. Relief washed across his face. "I'm here," he promised. That night, the house was quiet again. Aria sat on her bed, staring at the letter. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and rain began tapping against her window. The storm outside matched the one within her. She picked up the letter. This time, she didn't put it down. She held it with both hands, closed her eyes, and breathed deeply, as if preparing to step into a memory that could either destroy her or set her free. Her fingers slid under the seal. A knock at her door froze her mid-motion. "Aria." Her mother's voice came from the hallway. "Can I come in?" Aria exhaled shakily. "Yes." The door creaked open, and her mother entered slowly. She sat beside Aria on the bed, her eyes soft with understanding. "I know this is hard," she said. I can see how much you're hurting, but whatever is in that letter, you don't have to face it alone. Aria swallowed the lump in her throat. Her mother placed a warm hand over hers. When you're ready, she whispered. And for the first time, the words didn't make Aria pull away. After her mother left, Aria stared at the letter in her lap. Thunder cracked across the sky, shaking the windows. The storm was growing stronger, and so was she. She took another breath. Her fingers tightened on the paper. She began to open it slowly, carefully, deliberately. The past was calling, and she was finally ready to answer. Part 6. The new beginning, the storm outside, had finally reached its full strength. Rain hammered the windows in rhythmic waves. Lightning split the sky into trembling shards of white, and thunder followed with a roar that shook the walls of the house. But inside Aria's room, everything had gone still. The letter lay open in her hands. She had finally broken the seal. For a long time, she did nothing but stare at the first line, her breath held somewhere between fear and hope. Then, slowly, she began to read. Aria, if this letter reaches you, it means I didn't make it back. I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you everything in person. I wanted to say it with my own voice, standing in front of you, not through ink on a page. But war doesn't wait for the right moment. Aria's vision blurred. She pressed her fingertips to the paper, as if touching the words might bring him back. I need you to know something. Something I should have said a long time ago. You were my calm in the chaos. You were the voice in my head that reminded me to breathe when everything around us burned. You made me feel human when the world tried to take that from us. Her shoulders shook. She covered her mouth, trying not to sob. The storm outside echoed her grief. You once asked me what I wanted when all of this was over. I told you I didn't know. That wasn't true. I wanted a life. With you. A sound escaped her, a quiet, broken gasp. Memories flooded her. His laughter, his quiet glances, the comfort of sitting next to him during long nights when neither of them could sleep. She had felt something too, but she had buried it deep, too deep. You don't owe me anything, Aria. Not love, not grief, not guilt. But there's one thing I ask of you. Don't disappear. Don't let the war take you twice. Live the life I couldn't. Live it fully. Live it bravely. Aria pressed the letter against her chest as the first sob tore from her throat. Her body shook with everything she had held back for years: pain, longing, love, regret. It all spilled out at once. Thunder shook the house, but inside her, something else broke, and then something healed. When she finally lifted her head, the storm had softened. Rain still fell, but gently now, like the earth itself was exhaling. Aria wiped her tears and read the last lines. If there is another side after this one, I hope I find you there. Maybe then the timing will finally be right. Mason. She closed her eyes, letting the weight of his words settle into her heart. For the first time since she returned from the war, the silence didn't feel like a prison. It felt like space. Space to breathe. Space to heal. Space to begin again. The next morning was calm. The storm had washed the town clean. Sunlight spilled across the streets, soft and golden. Aria stood on the porch, the letter tucked carefully into her jacket. She wasn't hiding it anymore. She wasn't hiding anything anymore. Daniel stepped outside beside her. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, not because everything was fine, but because she finally believed it could be. "Yeah," she said softly. "I think I will be." He smiled, relieved. "So, what now?" Aria took a breath. The air felt new. "I think I'm going back to the center. I want to help. I want to talk. I want to be part of something again." Daniel's smile widened. "That sounds like a good start." It was. At the Veterans Center, Laura greeted her with open arms. "I'm glad you came back," she said warmly. Aria exhaled, feeling something inside her settle into place. "I'm ready," she replied. "Ready for what?" Laura asked gently. Aria looked out the window, watching sunlight dance across the world she had once feared to re-enter. Ready to live. That evening, Aria sat under the old oak tree in the park, the same place Mason once said he wanted to visit after the war. Children played in the distance. The wind rustled the leaves above her. She felt the warmth of the sun on her skin. For a moment, it felt like he was there beside her, not as a ghost haunting her, but as a memory guiding her. A memory full of love, a memory full of hope. Aria closed her eyes and whispered into the soft breeze, "I'll live for both of us." And the leaves above her rustled gently, as if answering back. It was not the end of her story. It was the beginning, her beginning. A new beginning built from pain, from love, from truth. A beginning she finally chose.